Today's video is sponsored by Scentbird. One thing about me is that I have somewhat of an obsession with cologne. I've been wearing them since I was in high school, and I always add it to my everyday routine. It goes without saying that one of the first things a person will notice about you is your scent, and having something that is pleasing to both you and whoever you are around is a good way to be remembered. This is where Scentbird comes in. Scentbird stands out by having more than 600 brands to choose from, ranging in iconic names like Gucci and Versace to more indie labels like Vince Camuto. Buying cologne online can be tricky. After all, you can't exactly smell your screen. But don't worry, Scentbird has a personalized quiz that you can take that allows you to filter colognes based off of who you are as a person. If you are the kind of person who likes to stand out from the crowd and be the life of the party, then Dolce & Gabbana's Light Blue Intense is the right choice for you. Or if you prefer taking it easier and would rather spend your evenings at home with a special someone, then Missing Person by Fuller makes the perfect pairing for your night. Honestly, this stuff smells so good that I can see why a person would easily go up missing wearing this. It's that good. And if you just want something light and simple, then Maison de Lassais's Les Nuits de Bali should be your new go-to. Scentbird is a must for those who want to look good, feel good, and smell amazing. Make sure to use my code SPOOKY for 55% off at Scentbird. It's just a little over $7 for your first month. It's available in both the United States and Canada. Thanks again to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. Use my code SPOOKY to get 55% off your first month. You may have once heard the saying, a religion is just a cult that's had enough time. It's the idea that any set of beliefs, if they stay popular for long enough, can become accepted as a legitimate, non-crazy way for human beings to live. 10 people staying in a compound praying to an alien species is a cult. 10 million people building temples and running a couple of national governments is a religion. And yeah, if you've ever seen a Facebook post from your edgy atheist friend referring to Easter as Zombie Jesus Day, you know that even a very popular belief system can sound strange outside of its usual context. It doesn't take much to make a religion seem crazy. But there are some belief systems that do make you wonder, is it possible for a cult to be considered too extreme? On April 28, 2021, deputies from the Saguache County Sheriff's Office entered a house in Moffat, Colorado, that was home to members of a new religious movement called Love Has Won. They were there to conduct a wellness check on one of its occupants, a woman whose ID called her Amy Carlson. But her followers knew her by a different name, Mother God. Police had been called in by Miguel Lamboy, a former member of the group who had told them that his child was being held inside of the house. In body cam video released by the sheriff's department, you can see officers moving through a cluttered, colorfully decorated space before reaching a back room, where, surrounded with white fairy lights and a hand-painted sign that read, "The event is here," was something, or someone, wrapped in a sleeping bag, and they weren't moving.
Oh shit! Wow, they painted her. Is it?
That's just, I think, decomp mummification. That's what I'm guessing at this point.
The eyelids and stuff.
The eyelids they painted, yeah.
Holy shit!
She,
I didn't even look at it. I was like,
been a
oh,
while.
is that her?
Yeah, this has been a while.
Yeah.
I like this response. So there's something back there. I don't know what the fuck it is, but
I couldn't see the face. And I was like, and then when I got closer, I was like, oh, we got.
What it was turned out to be most of the mummified body of Amy Carlson. I say most because nobody seems to know what happened to her eyes. The body had glitter around the eye sockets, and it had been set up in what the sheriff's department described as a shrine. The members of Love Has Won claimed that Carlson had died that day on April 28th, just moments before the officers entered the home. But since people don't mummify seconds after dying, who exactly were her followers getting their orders from? But let's rewind a little. Amy Carlson was born in Kansas in 1975. According to her family, she was a pretty good student, getting mostly A's and B's in school, and was known for her beautiful singing voice. Her parents divorced and remarried other people when she was young, and she grew up bouncing between two homes in Kansas and Oklahoma before her family settled in Texas, first Dallas and then ultimately Houston. Amy and her sister Tara claimed that their stepmother was abusive, but those allegations are so old that they are practically impossible to verify. As a young adult, Carlson had relationships with a number of men, eventually getting married at least 3 times and giving birth to 3 children with 3 different fathers. She managed a McDonald's franchise for a while, and then, in the mid-2000s, things started to get strange. Carlson developed an interest in New Age philosophy, and she began spending a lot of time posting on forums on a website called lightworkers.org. There she met a man named Amaranth White Eagle, who became convinced that she was some kind of divine being, and as all cult leaders do, once she began having followers, she suddenly gained these powers her flock seemed so certain that she had. She began reporting visions and other supernatural experiences in her past forms, including a heavenly voice telling her that she was destined to become president of the United States. In late 2007, Amy abruptly left her 3rd husband and her 3 kids, the oldest of whom was only 12, and her family would never see Amy alive again. The New Age movement is infamously hard to define. It's one of those concepts that scholars of religion get into loud arguments about during academic conferences. The result for this is that while most experts agree that the movement has a large pool of common influences and there are some striking common beliefs, there are so many bits and pieces that any one believer or groups of believers can more or less make up their own religion. Over the next decade, the religious group that would take the name Love Has Won would turn itself into an internet content machine. At the time of Carlson's death, their YouTube channel would be home to more than 2,700 videos that drew in followers from all over the world. Groups sprang up in Central America, South Africa, and Australia. The core group following Carlson around was only about 12 to 20 people, but they managed to rake in cash in the form of donations and sales of nutritional supplements. If you don't know, the nutritional supplement market in the United States has very little in the way of regulation. So much so, in fact, that a lot of the supplements on the market don't even contain the active ingredients listed on their labels. So there's no telling exactly what was really in these supplements Love Has Won was offering. But it is likely that one of the ingredients was colloidal silver, a chemical compound that might have mild antibacterial properties, but it can definitely turn your skin blue or purple if you take enough of the stuff. But Love Has Won started small, with just Carlson and White Eagle posting video clips from Crestone, Colorado, a small city that's become a mecca for New Age and UFO believers over the last couple of decades. Carlson and White Eagle would post soothing messages over music from bands like the Alan Parsons Project, and posted video clips of clouds drifting over the Sangre de Cristo mountain range. Clouds that they claimed were cloaked alien spaceships. At first, they published under the name the Galactic Free Press, and their ideas were mostly remixes of ideas that had been circulating among UFO cults as far back as the 1950s. Carlson began going by the name Mother God, and she called White Eagle Father God. He would be the first of several men to bear that name, and he was the more dominant presence in the earlier videos. Soon enough, though, he and Carlson separated, and Mother God would find a series of new Father Gods to support her quest to save the world. Miguel Lamboy, the man who would eventually call the cops to his house to discover Carlson's body, was actually the first follower to join Carlson. He later claimed that Carlson actually cured him of his end-stage lung cancer. Lamboy would end up being the organizer and mastermind behind most of Love Has Won's business arrangements, even going as far as incorporating the group into a nonprofit. There's some question about whether Lamboy took so much power in the group as a way of controlling Carlson behind the scenes, or as a way to shield her from legal repercussion for some of the group's activities. But there doesn't seem to be any real way to know. By the time Carlson hooked up with her last father god, a man named Juan Castillo, in 2018, the lore of Love Has Won had evolved into several bizarre directions. Carlson claimed to be more than 19 billion years old and to have lived over 500 different lives. She claimed to be the former queen and that she was the daughter of Donald Trump. Her followers believed that she was in a constant state of spiritual warfare against an evil force known only as the Cabal. According to Love Has Won, the Cabal were a group of alien reptiles that were hell-bent on destroying the world. And of course, God was also somewhere in there as well. Carlson claimed that the Cabal had tried to assassinate her at least 600 times, but they had failed. She said her past lives included being Jesus Christ, Joan of Arc, Cleopatra, and Marilyn Monroe. Her goal was to gather 144,000 believers, a number significant to Christians because of its inclusion in the Bible's book of Revelation. And she would lead them from the 3D world to the 5D world, according to Amy. Possibly through a starship, or maybe a portal in the ocean, again, according to Amy. By the summer of 2018, Carlson was appearing less and less in Love Has Won live streams, which were now mostly conducted by her followers. Like Carlson's own recordings, the followers' recordings were full of insults and profanity, along with the same recycled garbage every other cult group spits out. As Carlson's appearances grew more infrequent, the believers claimed that dark witches had attacked her, and that she was processing all of the world's negative energy through her body, and that she was breaking through the 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls from the book of Revelation. If her followers did so much as one thing wrong, they said it would cause her to suffer, which they said would explain why she would scream at them and verbally abuse them during her occasional live streams. Whatever was going on with Amy Carlson, it wasn't good. Her followers insisted that Love Has Won didn't believe in using any kind of drugs, prescription, or otherwise, so she was self-medicating with everyone's favorite painkiller, alcohol. Lots of alcohol. Ex-members would later claim that towards the end of her life, Amy was taking 8 to 10 shots of vodka per night, often drinking straight from the bottle. Followers were subjected to hours-long sessions of interrogation and verbal abuse, meant to discover their secrets and root out any evil from the group. In one videotape session, a follower actually confessed to disobeying an order from Carlson in the year 1431. And what's worse is that everyone believed it. Amy Carlson had brainwashed her followers that much. And of course, for added measure, her followers were all strongly encouraged to cut off all contact with their family and friends. Anyone who wasn't part of Love Has Won. In August of 2020, the group moved to the north shore of the island of Kauai and rented a beachfront house. They claimed that Carlson had cancer and was paralyzed from the waist down. They also claimed that she was the reincarnation of the Hawaiian volcano goddess Pele, which was a pretty much guaranteed way to piss off the local population. After the group ignored COVID restrictions, claimed that the pandemic was a hoax, and generally made a nuisance of themselves to the entire neighborhood, a group of about 100 protesters gathered outside of the house, lighting bonfires, waving signs, and yelling for the cult to get out. Love Has Won finally left Hawaii a month later. Shortly after, Love Has Won returned to Colorado. Carlson's family appeared on the Dr. Phil show in an attempt to convince Carlson to leave the group and get medical attention. Carlson appeared via video chat. She was skeletally thin, and her skin had turned blue, possibly from ingesting large amounts of the colloidal silver that were in those supplements. In April of 2021, Love Has Won was staying at a rental property near Mount Shasta in California, a mountain that they believed was secretly home to the surviving population of Lemuria. On April 10th of 2021, the landlord of that property spoke to Carlson and later said that he didn't think that she had long to live. In the following days, her followers spoke on live streams about Carlson preparing to leave her vessel. A few days later, on the 17th of April, Carlson's family contacted authorities in the town of Mount Shasta requesting a wellness check. An ambulance was sent to the rental property, but her followers turned it away. There is no real reliable account of exactly when and how Amy Carlson died. Her autopsy report describes her cause of death as alcohol abuse, anorexia, and chronic colloidal silver ingestion. Since Carlson's death, Love Has Won has rebranded under the name 5D Full Disclosure, and their supplement company is now going by Mother Nature Natural Essentials. Several splinter groups have popped up, run by former members, but the main organization is still pushing through. They claim Mother God is still with them and still fighting for them, but on another plane of existence. For survivors and refugees from Love Has Won, Carlson's death seems to have provided a little bit of relief from the trauma that they described. For Carlson's family, the feelings are a little more mixed. Towards the end of her life, her followers described her occasionally begging to go to a hospital, a request that they refused because they believed that she had been temporarily taken over by the cabal. Amy Carlson clearly suffered from a serious mental illness, and once she had gathered her followers around her, they were only ever going to make it worse. As her mother told Rolling Stone, she was a victim too. In the days before social media, it was a lot easier for people to just disappear. One day your neighbor or your coworker or even your own relative would be a part of your life, and then the next day they wouldn't be. Maybe they'd gone off to college and nobody would expect to hear from them until the winter break. Maybe they joined the military, or they took a job in another city. They'd move away, and in some cases you would never hear from them again. Nobody seemed to think that this was strange, and growing up in that time, I can say that it wasn't. Long-distance phone calls were expensive. Email wasn't even a thing until fairly recently, and writing and mailing letters was kind of a pain. So sometimes people just left, and all those everyday disappearances provided camouflage for the disappearances that weren't just ordinary life changes. This story is about the other kind of disappearance. Technically, social media existed on May 8th, 2008, when 18-year-old Joshua Vernon Maddux walked out of the door of his family's home in Woodland Park, Colorado, for the last time. Facebook had been around since 2005, and MySpace was still very much a popular platform. But Josh wasn't the kind of teenage boy who lived online, even by 2008 standards. He loved going out for long hikes in the Pike National Forest, which surrounded the small town of Woodland Park, right outside of Colorado Springs. The woods had been a source of comfort and solace for him, especially since his older brother Zachary had died by suicide 2 years earlier. Josh lived with his father Mike and his sisters Kate and Ruth, and everyone describes him as an easygoing, fairly happy teenage boy in the months leading up to his disappearance. He turned 18 in March and was doing well in school. He loved writing music and playing his guitar. In fact, when he vanished, his older sister Kate assumed that he'd simply gone off to become a professional musician, and that they'd hear from him once he became a success or decided to come back home. Josh was a free spirit. and he always told us that he was going to have a great adventure and that he may not talk to us for a while. When he said a while, we thought maybe a few years. It would turn out to be a lot longer than that. Nobody would hear anything from Josh until August of 2015, when 80-year-old Chuck Murphy began demolishing a small cabin less than a mile from the Maddux home. Chuck had owned the cabin since the 1950s, but it was a lot older than that, and no one had lived there for over a decade. The place was in terrible shape, full of rotten timbers, garbage, and animal feces. Chuck was a property developer from Colorado Springs, and he had decided that it was time to turn the forest land around the cabin into 32 new homes. The cabin had 2 sturdy stone fireplaces, so it took an excavator to begin the work of tearing the place apart. But as the chimney's stone and metal structure came apart, it revealed something shocking. Amidst the debris and dust left behind from the fallen chimney, curled up in a fetal position, was the mummified body of a young man. Realizing what he was looking at, Chuck immediately stopped the excavator and called the police. The police called the county coroner, and after a fairly extensive testing, dental records were able to identify the body as Josh Maddux. At first, everyone assumed that they were looking at a horrific accident. People do get stuck in tight places and die more often than you'd think, and chimneys are one of those spaces where it happens. In fact, while researching this video, Josh Maddux wasn't even the top result for the manner in which he was found. That honor went to Zachariah Andrews of Norfolk, Nebraska, a 29-year-old man who was found in the chimney of an apartment building on October 9th, 2023, about a month after he went missing. Bodies being found in chimneys sometimes just happen, which is why the autopsy on Josh didn't immediately raise any red flags. His body showed no evidence of foul play, no broken bones, no knife wounds, or bullet holes. There wasn't going to be any kind of useful toxicology report, being that Josh had been dead for so long, and also the state of his body. And there were plenty of accidental causes of death that wouldn't leave any marks. If Josh died of dehydration or hypothermia after getting stuck, no coroner looking at his body 7 years later would have been able to see that, which is why the coroner ruled his death as an accident. But Chuck Murphy, among others, wasn't convinced. According to Chuck, the chimney where Josh was found had been built in the mid-1990s, and a panel of steel wire mesh had been attached to a set of hooks near the top of the chimney to keep out debris and wildlife. The police investigating the scene didn't report seeing that mesh panel, but the chimney was halfway demolished by the time Josh was found, so that really doesn't mean very much. Animals obviously got into the cabin to leave feces around, but the problem is that they could have entered through the other chimney or any other part of the damaged building. To this day, Chuck insists that Josh couldn't have entered that chimney from the top. So, he entered from the bottom then, right? Well, there are problems with that explanation too. First, everyone agrees that Josh was found in a fetal position with his feet pointing towards the sky and his head pointing towards the ground. Most people trying to climb up a chimney don't do it feet first. And second, they definitely don't do it without their pants on. When Josh was found, he was wearing only a thin thermal shirt. The rest of his clothes, including his pants, socks, and shoes, were found neatly folded inside of the cabin, right next to the fireplace. There's no word on his underwear, but it's not clear whether he was wearing any when he left home. And one final thing that was very bizarre is that a wooden breakfast bar had been actually ripped out of the wall near the kitchen and shoved up against the fireplace, blocking it off from the rest of the cabin. Chuck says that he didn't do that and doesn't know who did. Now, something that stood out to me was this. Woodland Park, Colorado sits more than 8,400 feet, or about 2,500 meters above sea level. In early May of 2008, when Josh went missing, daytime temperatures had dropped to about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, or between -6 and 7 degrees Celsius. And that's where it's weird, because I really don't know a lot of people who would get naked below the waist and climb into a stone and metal chimney in that kind of weather. Officially, Josh Maddux's death is classified as a tragic accident, but the thing that can't be ignored is the unexplained weirdness in this case. And by this point, no doubt that you were probably yelling at your screen that somebody else must have been involved. The police have received several anonymous tips in this case, but no one stands out above the rest. A few years ago, someone posted on Reddit in response to a question about people who had known serial killers. I wasn't able to find the original post, only copies of it, and it is a Reddit post, so do take this with a grain of salt. The poster claimed to have gone to high school with a dorky hippie kid named Andy, who played guitar in some kind of band and started hanging around with Josh after the OP graduated. The poster claimed that shortly after Josh disappeared, Andy was involved in the stabbing death of a disabled man in New Mexico. When he was arrested, Andy also claimed to have killed a woman and stuffed her body into a barrel. For what it's worth, the Houston Herald did report on that stabbing and on a 21-year-old man named Andrew Richard Newman being arrested for it in 2009. But the poster also claims that Andy had bragged about putting Josh in a hole. They also claim that the police refused to investigate the tips about Andy, although that is hard to confirm. It is worth noting that at the time of his disappearance, Josh was 6 feet tall and weighed about 150 pounds, or 68 kilograms. That's a lot of human being for one guy to shove into a chimney from any direction. No matter which way you look at it, the case of Josh Maddux doesn't really add up. If he did put himself into the chimney, why? If someone else put him into the chimney, again, why? If Josh went into the chimney from the bottom, how did he end up in the position that he was found in? If he went in from the top, why did he, or someone else, leave his clothes inside of the cabin, go outside, climb onto the roof of a crumbling building, and put Josh down the chimney? When was the mesh removed from the chimney? When did the breakfast bar get put up against the front fireplace? All of these questions still to this day have no answers. Chuck Murphy says he visited the cabin several times between 2008 and 2015, and he never smelled a dead body. But how? Did Andrew Newman have anything to do with the end of Josh's life? Or did a random Redditor stumble across a gory news article and make up something for internet clout? So far, there's no clear explanation for what took place in Chuck Murphy's cabin on May 8th, 2008. Josh's family may never have answers to their questions. We're left with only what Kate told the Denver Post. We'll never really know what happened to him, and it's a horror story in my mind.